Welcome back to another episode of Mystery Read Reads. Today we are doing a Concrit for The Princess Allura. We received a request for Concrit only, not a beta read. So as I dive in, if I'm disrupted by things that would be, if my read is disrupted by things that would be found in a beta read, I'm going to try to overlook them. But as the reader, if they interfere with the story too much or they're too frequent, then I will probably go ahead and mention them for the sake of the story. Because obviously we want an experience for our reader to be as seamless as possible, but we're going to try to just go for our read and a concrete. Let's see. We've got a new fandom here. This, well, new to me, not new to our channel and new to me. I am not familiar with Voltron, so when I read or concrete for a fandom that I don't usually work in, then I'm not going to be able to identify if a character and a character from the fandom is in character, meaning the way they're portrayed by the canon. Okay. So this says the relationship is between Allura and Keith. It's mature. I'm going to keep an eye out for that to make sure that we are staying PG here. So let's see. Our title is Interloper. Our summary says Keith and Allura have stumbled into a place where they are neither here nor there. In a world where they don't belong and their fate lies in the hands of another reality loter, can they get out alive when no one knows where they are? Okay, I like the little summary there. It reads pretty darn well. I'm not sure if this is because I'm unfamiliar with the fandom, but I'm not sure. It's in a world where they don't belong and their fate lies in the hands of another reality loader. I'm guessing that has something to do with the fandom itself. So that'd be why I didn't know what that was. We're going to move on. It looks good there. Notes. Hey everyone, so finally posting this here mainly because I need it posted to write the next chapter and include it in the Wumptober because if the prompt fits, then why not? This is an AU from S2 Arc of Tajir onwards, and I hope you all enjoy it. Any guesses to which loader this is since we have a few iterations of Voltron? Tell me in your comments and reviews. It's a really nice author's note. Chapter 1, A Place Between Realities. Okay, I'm guessing she probably, I shouldn't assume the gender here, but the princess implies feminine, so we're going to go with a female author here. Okay, I'm guessing they probably do what I do and they write somewhere else and then copy paste or upload to the platform. So, and that's probably, this is probably as much for the author as it is for you here. When we're uploading, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to keep our place. You upload and then you go back and name your chapters afterwards. Okay, let's dive in. Allura. Keith dove towards her, managing to grab a hold of her wrist, but the two were sent flying back. He managed to pull her close as they hit a hard surface, rocks scattering from underneath them. Princess, are you all right? I believe so, Allura replied, looking around. But where are we? That was a good question. It didn't look like a planet, but Keith could no longer see where the pod had flown off to. Not to mention that he didn't feel red anymore. So where had they come to? I can't feel red, Keith said quietly. He must have gotten too far away. He could always feel Red's presence in the back of his mind, but now it was like things were too silent. He realized he had not let go of Allura's wrist and didn't feel inclined to do so anytime soon. It's better if we stick together so we don't get lost, at least until we can figure out what's going on. That was the excuse he gave himself, at least, but his heart protested to it for some reason he couldn't quite place right now. That's not good, Allura said, looking around as well. I can't see a way to get off the planet. It's as if a view of the open space is blocked somehow. Can you contact the other Paladins? Paladins. Keith tried to get a hold of Shiro on his comms device, but all he could hear was static. What was going on? They didn't have a clear view of space. They were on a planet. If it was even a planet in the first place, where all they could be seen was sand for miles. It's not working, Keith said, turning towards her, and as he took a step forward, the sand crunching under his feet made him stop for a moment. But maybe he was cut off by a purple glowing aura and another being stepped out of there. He had long white blonde hair that fell down to his waist and purple eyes as he stepped toward them, causing Keith to immediately let go of Allura's hand, shifting his body in front of her. The being had purple skin like most Galra, as well as the ears, as his gaze fell on Allura, eyeing her up and down. Okay, I'm just going to pause for a little second because this is, honestly, it's reading pretty well. And despite my not being familiar with the fandom, I'm still able to follow the story and what is happening. So this is very good. My suggestion thus far, because some sentences are a little either long or wordy, or they read awkwardly. Just my tip to this up to this point is when you write periodically before I post, especially when you're as good as you are, because this is pretty darn good. Read it out loud, because if you get caught up on a sentence reading it out loud, then it could read that way to when a person's reading it silently to themselves. It's a practice that I've started doing recently, and it really helps to get the best quality out of my writing. That way I know that if I'm struggling over a sentence, that something's not working for it. And I'm not, because you asked for a Concrit only and not a beta read, I'm not going to go back over and do each little detail like I usually do. I'm just going to say that there's a sentence up here, and there's a couple sentences in this paragraph that I struggled over, and so they took me out of the story, and I started to get lost. I'm following it, but they were detracting from the story, and your writing is too good to allow that to happen. So that is my suggestion so far. So we're going to dive back in here. "My, aren't you a beauty?" he said, walking over to them, and Keith tensed, about to pull about his Bayard, but the other reacted quicker, shoving him down. Keith stumbled at the strength he didn't expect as he fell, wincing as he used his elbows to break his fall, and luckily his paladin armor protected him from any further injuries. "Keith!" Allura was by his side immediately before he could stand back up. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Keith said quickly. "I was just a little surprised. Besides, I have a feeling I'm not the one you should worry about." He couldn't explain how he knew that, but he remembered a conversation he had with Shiro when he was just a kid. I didn't like he looked at you," an 11-year-old Keith explained to his older brother. "I know I'm just a kid, so maybe I was wrong, but it's just a feeling I have." "Did he give you a bad vibe?" Shiro asked, looking thoughtful. Keith nodded, fully prepared for Shiro to dismiss it and not take him seriously. Adults usually did this, but there was a small part of him that hoped he would. Maybe he would be different since he had gone this far to adopt him. However, Shiro then nodded as well. "Then I'll trust that bad vibe," Shiro said softly. "If someone ever gives you a bad vibe, Keith, don't ever ignore it. You can always come to me, and we can work it out, okay?" Keith's heart lifted, and he nodded. "Okay, I won't." "What do you mean, Keith?" Allura asked him, bringing him out of his thoughts, and Keith shook his head, slowly standing back up. "Just a bad vibe," was all Keith said in response. He didn't know to explain more to her because it was just a feeling, and he couldn't really say the logic behind it. It was like how he knew that not all the Gara could be bad, that perhaps the Blade of Marmoa could be good, that maybe some of them were actively working to fight against the Empire. "Bad," the being said again as he stepped forward. "Is admiring beauty a bad thing? I don't see why it would be a problem." He looked at Allura again. "Greetings, gorgeous. You are simply breathtaking. My name is Prince Loder. Might I catch yours?" Allura looked a little taken aback, raising an eyebrow before looking back at Keith. "I see your point." Her face formed a fierce glare. "Where are we? Did you bring us here?" "Not intentionally," Loder replied simply. "But it was a fortunate accident for me, at least. I still didn't catch your name, though." "Her name isn't any of your business," Keith said defensively. His sword appeared in his hand, ready for a fight, if need be. Not that Allura couldn't defend herself, but they didn't have the Castle of Lions right now, and they had little knowledge of their surroundings or situation. Loder watched him, gaze growing cold as he looked at him. You don't need to speak for her, Interloper. I am trying to have a conversation. He isn't an interloper, Allura said, frowning. He's my friend. She reached out, taking Keith's hand, causing him to jump slightly, but he quickly calmed down, squeezing her hand in turn. Loder sighed a little. Why must you make things difficult, darling? His eyes glowed a silvery blue, causing Keith to tense more as his and Allura's bodies began to glow a similar color. He attempted to swing his sword to cut off Loder's concentration, but realized he could not move a muscle. Damn it, what had he done? Through the corner of his eye, he saw Allura struggling to move as well. He had to do something, but what? They were stranded here, with no way of communicating with the others. Shiro was right. This had been a terrible idea. Princess, hang on, Keith said softly. We'll figure something out. The words felt hollow. He had never liked fake reassurances, but he would find a way to make it happen. Aren't you a gentleman? Loder said with a chuckle before raising his fingers toward Allura, and her body moved toward him. Allura, Keith called out as her eyes widened. Allura, huh? Loder said, eyes returning normal, but his fingers remained where they were as he walked over. You're much more beautiful than my realities, Allura, in so many ways. I like the fight in you. He leaned in close to her. But let me tell you, Princess, you and that interloper cannot return back to your friends until I decide it. You see, you're on my turf now. Keep your distance, Allura said, keeping her voice low and threatening as she continued to try to squirm. Keith tried to move when he realized he could and gripped his sword, throwing it towards Loder, who dodged it but did what he had intended. It broke his concentration and caused Allura to fall to the ground. Keith took this opportunity to run to her and pull her behind him, extending his arms out to make himself into a living shield in front of her, sword still at the ready. No matter what happened, he would protect her. Okay, this reads really well. And it sets your story up. You dive right into the action. There's a lot I like about it. I really like it, honestly. It reads really well. It's actually reads a lot like my stuff reads, except I haven't gone back and edited and revised my own, so I could critique them very hard. I'm actually don't have a really hard concrit for this, so I do a first chapter crit, and this looks really good. It reads really well. Again, my only suggestion here is to read it out loud, and sentences that a person struggles over or has to go back and fix. Like if they don't read clean straight out. I mean, the only ones I clunked over were a couple here and there, and you can kind of tell when I was doing the read where I had to slow down. And I don't have to read fast, but like where they really slowed me down when I had to reread some of them, those sentences I would just give a little glance to. But generally, this reads really well, and you have a lot to be proud of. This is a really good start to a story. I like it. And I'm not even familiar with this fandom, and I'm tempted to keep reading. So that's great. It definitely deserves more hits than 326, and it definitely deserves more kudos than that. And I'm going to throw it a kudos right now. So here we go. Let's see. And we're just going to say hello. Oops, I'm in all caps. Right, and I'm going to hit comment here as right after I finish up the rest of my concrete. Thank you so much to Princess Allura for letting me read your first chapter. A Place Between Realities for the Interloper by Princess Allura. I will share a link to this story in my comments if you'd like me to do a beta read or concrete, one or the other or both of your first chapter or your one shot. Comment and leave me a comment and a link to your story, and I will dive in. Until next time.